AI is sometimes thought of as a late career Spielberg masterpiece, and whilst I'm willing to believe it is the best film Spielberg directed in the 21st century, possibly, I would hesitate to refer to it as a major masterpiece outright. I think the reason is that the premise seems a bit too inherently sentimental for me to really appreciate. The philosophic aspiration is drowned out by its evident intent to stir the viewer's emotions. The child wants a mother, this synthetic child, an AI programmed to think it is a child. It wants a mummy of his own. This is portrayed as something of great emotional ferocity, and so it almost loses me the philosophic basis for this speculative fiction inquiry. Why wouldn't the AI programmed to believe it is a human child want its own mother? Why wouldn't it want to be loved? Doesn't it deserve to be loved? These are all emotional projections onto the subjects in question. I fail to see the relevant what if from a more scientific perspective. If the prospect of the AI feeling intensely emotional is the area of exploration, why are we compelled to feel a certain way about it? In this instance, sorrowful. It doesn't simply present the events as occurring so that we might make up our own mind about it. We are clearly meant to feel for David. That is not ambiguous. It seems odd that I am decrying the film for not being colder, as though I were a robot and not a human, but really interesting works of science fiction are rooted usually in some genuine inquiry, and not an emotional appeal to a potential avenue of artificial intelligence development. If the question is meant to be, why shouldn't we feel emotional for this scenario or circumstance, then the film itself has failed to ask it. It immediately insists that David ought to be sympathized with, is worthy of love, and most importantly, can love. I'm not necessarily disputing the validity of the scenario or science fiction exploration, the prospect of an AI, in this case believing itself a human child, feeling love for its adopted human parent, but all we're instructed to feel and not ask is great sympathy and sadness. David is only allowed to feel uncanny for a moment before Spielberg demands we feel along with his experienced injustices. It is a given that his plight is valid. The humans behave comically uncaring, even though theoretically they should be as emotionally manipulated by the proceedings as we are, and if there is a genuine reason for the humans' distrust of the AIs, we are not shown it. They are simply ignorant monsters, making AI, as Spielberg realized it, at least, more of a straightforward fairy tale than genuinely compelling science fiction inquest. Insofar as we witness a futuristic world, innovative applications of technology, and a display of rich visuals, AI is very watchable science fiction cinema, but makes for a generally unimpressive screenplay, and could have made a relatively interesting novel were it handled via a more interesting tone, potentially. Bradbury found the emotional and mechanical logic via his short story Icing the Body Electric. I can't say the same for Spielberg in AI, quite sadly. Her was a smarter film at displaying the ambiguous emotions of human-coded software and how it eventually relates to the onset of the prophesized singularity event. And so was the 2008 Japanese film The Clone Returns Home, directed by Kanji Nakajima, where anthropogenically created humans, in this case the clone of a deceased man, struggle with the aggressive shock of having to fulfill a program, the yield of the subject's memories, and a craving for the emotional fulfillment which this human urge instills in this engineered life. It is a great film to look at, although I'm not impressed with the screenplay, and either Kubrick knew it was better suited for Spielberg's brand of schmaltz and threw it over to him, or he really would have handled it in a far more interesting fashion. I'm not sure. The struggle of an animated puppet, animated via fairy dust and Disney slaves both, to become a so-called real boy is philosophically vaguely interesting, maybe not as much as Professor Lobster wanted you to think, but in some respects, almost. The notion of a real living boy being one who fulfills a certain moral code is a compelling one, as Noel Oakeshott once put it, an imaginative flip on the Bible. I might prefer Minority Report, more watchable, better, and more of an exciting viewing experience, maybe even more impressive and imaginative cinematically, although that would be the only 21st century Spielberg film I like more than this one. Hey, as schmaltz, it's really not half bad. As the successor to the exploratory science fiction of, say, 2001 or A Clockwork Orange, Walron Kubrick, or hell, even Spielberg's own endeavours in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I don't think this one holds up, and I really wish it did. I've tried to feel this way, but it just doesn't happen. Maybe I'll grow to admire this film more, but currently I can't say I love AI, although I think I do like it overall. Yes.